One should never underestimate the value of what one can learn by just doing uh, basic stuff and following a simple provocation by someone and using AI to learn something. I started out with one of these. So on Christmas Eve, Sam Parr essentially said, Sam Parr is a very well known founder, runs My First Million podcast, which now has over 700 episodes, probably about 600 to 1,000 hours worth of content. And he said, hey, is there a way for me to transcribe all my 700 plus episodes? And then I want a database of all that stuff that I've said over the years and find some cool ideas I can repurpose. And I sort of responded that, hey, this is the end product you want. You want transcriptions with high levels of accuracy. Uh, and then you probably want something like a notebook LM where you can easily ask in-depth questions. Then I started thinking about how it would be done, and I realized that something like an ElevenLabs API for bulk transcription or something like superdata.ai could be used. Of course, it will be costly. It'll, you'd spend some money, but it'll go through every YouTube link and turn them into markdown files. My understanding here was that sure, YouTube has transcriptions of your videos, but they are not necessarily of the highest quality all the time, and sometimes they just don't exist, and you can't necessarily use the YouTube API to download all the transcripts from a very large channel. And this is the interesting part. Just a few days before that, I had spent time trying to build out a system where I just took one single video. I had conducted a workshop and I had a 1 hour long video. I had the video file on my device and I wanted to transcribe it and turn it into notes. And I'd sort of played around with this system and, I'd used OpenAI's Whisper API to essentially convert this video file, extract the audio, turn it into, transcribe it, and use that text file to then create a structured output on the workshop that I'd run, right? Which was, a fairly well-structured document. So I had sort of some idea of having done this just a few weeks before Sam's original tweet, that this was possible for one video. But if I think about back here, the problem statement has changed. 700 episodes and doing this at scale. Now, this is where you have to really use your product brain, because think about it. Let's try and come up with some basic back of the paper napkin math. A 1 hour video, a 60-minute long video. Suppose the way you describe its transcription time is 60 minutes of video takes about 1 minute to transcribe. So 60x of real time, right? 1 hour gets condensed to 1 minute. Now, this is great if you can do even 30, 40x or 60x. Within a minute or two, you could take a 1 hour long video and transcribe it, right? You'd have to download the video, extract the audio, and then convert the audio into transcription. But now start thinking about it. 60 minutes is 1 minute of transcription. What if you had 600 minutes? So you had 10 hours of video. So then this is 10 minutes of transcription. And as Sam said, he's talking about hundreds of hours here, all right, 700 episodes. So the scale starts increasing from 10 hours to 100 hours to, and you realize that then the transcription time also starts ballooning up into hours and half a day, 2 days. And sure, one could have that kind of time. But it also made me think, and this is when we used to take the classic product management interview, and there are interviews where you ask people to estimate and you ask people to figure out how things scale. One of the things that all PMs have to always think about is, if I made this product just for myself, which is what I did here, which is how do I transcribe one single 1 hour long video and turn it into a decent file? And I said, hey, why don't I do it? Of course, there were things available online which I could do it for free, but I just wanted to see if I could build a system like that. And that works. The great thing with AI is that you can build a project just for yourself. And then you can say, okay, this project, I can scale it up a little bit, and I can go from the me problem to the we problem, and I can start using it for 2 or 3 people. And somebody says, hey, I have about 4 or 5 hours of videos, and sure, if you can get 30x, 40x of real time, 1 hour will take about 2 minutes, and you can do 5 hours of videos in 10 minutes, and that's great. But then what do you do when somebody like a Sam presents a problem like this? Now suddenly you have to think about scale, and you also have to think about cost, because the likelihood is that your CPU might not be strong enough. And more importantly, you might not have a state-of-the-art GPU. And some of these models require, you to have things like, an NVIDIA graphics card installed with CUDA on it. So things start becoming interesting. And then when you think about what's available out of the box, something like an ElevenLabs or SAPA data, then it becomes an even more interesting problem. And I had been playing around with speech to text for a while. I'm a huge user of Whisperflow. I pretty much now dictate everything instead of typing. So I've sort of been playing around with the idea of what it takes and trying to understand what it would take to build an on-device system which could transcribe in real time. But then this is a slightly different problem, which is how do you transcribe at scale? Uh, and that's just the step one. What Sam wants to do is he wants to build a lot of intelligence on top of that transcription, which is what folks like Pods can do. And there are a whole bunch of these services which build insights on top of people's podcasts and people's YouTube channels, which greatly help advertisers and other people. Somebody like a Delphi.ai is trying to build a whole bunch of insights on top of these. So it would have been very interesting to sort of just think about that first step of this. What would it take to take 700 videos from a YouTube channel and transcribe it? And as usual, I sort of got involved. 7, 8 hours later, I realized all of Christmas Day I was working on it, and I went out for a Christmas lunch with my family, slept a little bit, and then uh, it was close to midnight, and I found myself, I was still working on this problem. Sam had his provocation had clearly sent me down a curiosity rabbit hole, right? And I kept digging and I kept working on this problem, and then I worked through it on the 26th. And then I realized, okay, so spent about 30 hours trying to dig and had different systems working. Built something which, with a decent GPU, you could download audio, and then discovered something called Modal, which I'll talk about a little bit. But the idea was, is there a way to take a channel of 1,000 hours and do it under 5 to 6 hours of transcription? That's it. I limited my problem to just this, right? On Sam's channel, I found 1,044 videos, and started transcribing them and starting figuring out. The first system I ran was about to had already run for 10 hours and had only done about 30-40%. So it would have taken another full day to finish it. So I wanted to bring it down to 5 to 6 hours, right? So then what I ended up building is a YouTube channel bulk transcriber, which is GPU accelerated. Now, essentially, if you are running this on your device, you can do it at 35-40x, which means 40 minutes can be done in 1 minute. But I discovered something called Modal, which I had heard about, but essentially it's GPUs for hire. They have a very good free tier of about $30 a month. And for transcribing something like 1,000 hours, you'd probably spend about $5-6. So it was totally worth using this and playing around with it. And you could get speeds up to 200x of real time, which means 200 minutes takes about 1 minute to transcribe, which is fantastic. What I ended up building was a bulk process. So to transcribe a big channel, you have to be able to download the audio from each of the video and then individually take each audio and transcribe it. So parallel downloads, smart storage, progress tracking, just in case your download stops in between, or what if you want to download multiple channels. So this whole system is now, it's live on GitHub. I've used it to build. This is an example of my first million. The entire channel is now transcribed, as I said, 1,000 odd videos. Every single transcript is in here. I also tried doing it for other channels, of course. smaller channels take far less time compared to a much larger channel. But doing this now, what's the purpose of doing this? Now, obviously, I'm not going to build a bulk transcription company, right? There are much better pieces of software available out there. There are people and teams dedicated to doing this at scale and doing this really, really well. But I think the reason one wants to build things like this, and the reason you want to test out things like this, is because it's very critical for product builders to understand what are limitations. Now, here I had to build something which essentially does something very interesting, right? It works on a model where I'm going to scrape a channel, I'm going to download batch videos, and then I'm going to transcribe the batch, right? And then I've essentially built a hybrid approach. So your computer downloads YouTube videos uh, and then uses Modal for uploading audio only, uses the GPUs on Modal to transcribe in parallel and achieve 700 to 200x of real-time speed. And then your computer gets the results back. Right? Now, of course, if you have a decent GPU of your own, uh, uh, or you have a eGPU, you can sort of do a bunch of these things together on your device itself. But otherwise, you can use something like Modal. Uh, gave me a great opportunity to learn about things like Fast Whisper and OpenAI's Whisper model, and which one was better and why Faster Whisper was better on the local machine and on the local GPU. But given the kind of support that OpenAI's Whisper has, and given its CUDA support, that was just easier to run on Modal. Uh, and so, learning a project like this, I learned how to use something like Modal, and my costs obviously ballooned because I kept transcribing one channel after the other, but I was still under my $30 free limit, so that was great. And I'm back to now zero on this. And it was good to sort of finally build something and launch it, and as a process actually learn something interesting, learn something new. And I think this bit is very critical. If you are a product builder, you want to use AI to speed up your learning, right? And I wouldn't have touched a whole bunch of different technologies and figured out a whole bunch of things around speech to text and how to scale these up, and what would it take to build a system like ElevenLabs. And I know I'm saying this, but I've just scratched the surface of what it would take to build a company like ElevenLabs, which speech to text is just a small part of what perhaps they are doing. Or thinking about on-device small models which could, you know, transcribe in real time, something like what WhisperFlow does, which if you notice here, I use quite a lot, and it's always on, and I'm always transcribing and always using it to enter, text. So yeah, I think these provocations are very critical and great opportunities for us to sort of learn about new things.